You know the only thing worse than having to play through the boring and long-ass narrative drivel that is Dawntrail? Is having to go through rewatching those same boring-ass cutscenes again for the recordings so I can make these videos. Energy drink manufacturers have made a fortune off of me. They're the only reason I haven't flatlined yet. On the downside, I've chugged so much of the stuff that I'm rather certain my internal organs are liquefying. You can't have anything nice these days. Welcome back to part 2 of our breakdown of FF14 Dawntrail. In the previous video, we explained what a borehole the game was, enough to drive some of us to borderline mental illness. We also discussed how the lack of character diversity hurt the story and depleted a lot of potential value in the script. This was thanks to the writers only caring to focus on one single character, Wuk Lamat, the for all intents and purposes protagonist of the game. She's given the only substantive story arc, and a vast majority of the screen time. This might not seem like an issue at first. We're just narrowing our focus a bit. It gives us more time to expand our horizons, build up this new world, and let us explore a bit. Except, Dawntrail doesn't let us do that. The world building was bland, as established. We don't get to explore, we get pointless main scenario quests that are literal filler, wasting time that could be used to build up a more intriguing plot. And despite all this free time we apparently have, the game still drags itself to accommodate the one and only character it cares about. And because all the attention is on Wuk, and Wuk alone, the story lacks critical diversity in its development. Pretty ironic considering Tural's whole selling point is being a hub of diverse species and cultures. Wuk Lamat's whole personality can boil down to a very few traits. She likes food, she loves her family, and she loves her people. She despises heights and gets motion sickness, and that's about it. Alright, that alone isn't an issue, it's just enough to build a personality around. Plenty of stories can have their characters boiled down to a few specific traits.
Is he the stupid mean one, the stupid annoying one, or the stupid one?
The problem is, hers is the only personality that gets attention. The entire Rite of Secession plot revolves around Wuk, and most of the conflict with Alexandria ends up with her at center stage as well. Please understand, an important part of storytelling is the characters and their drives, their personalities. Depending on how they act, how they see and interpret the world, dictates how they respond. I know that may be obvious, but it is extremely important, and it's noticeable when your story lacks any such diverse perspective, just as it was with Dawntrail. It was Wuk Lamat, and more of Wuk Lamat, and once that got boring, you always had the option to spend time with Wuk Lamat. Now tell me, what is Wuk Lamat like? Food, peace, and happiness. We know this through the intricate writing strategy of them saying so, repeatedly, during very inappropriate times no less.
Thank you, Lord Captain, for the delicious repast.
He's dead, sister. This city was just shot up like a fish in a high-tech barrel. Now is not the time for your food fetish. Settle down. It is like this constantly, because no matter what situation we're in, it involves Wuk Lamat. Constantly. And if her personality doesn't click with you, if her ranting about peace and happiness gets too cartoonish, if she's just tiresome or boring, or her limited personality traits drags out every moment past the point of even having a point, you have nowhere to go, because she's all you get. She's all this game is about. Yes, even those moments you're thinking of right now, and the only major time we get space from her is when we visit Westworld, and it's complete filler. Virtually nothing we did there meant anything. I skipped more cutscenes in this one section of the game than anywhere else because it was so boring and so wasteful. Everything else though comes back to Wuk Lamat. If this character doesn't appeal to you, then Dawntrail doesn't appeal to you. They are synonymous. I touched on this in the previous video. Shifting the character focus from time to time keeps your narrative fresh, and it provides different opportunities for the writers to utilize. Easy examples, I like Astinian, because he's blunt and to the point. I think we can all agree the Scions are very wordsy people, so it's nice to have someone who won't beat around the bush and just say what they mean. I can always rely on Astinian to get right to the stabbing parts, the fun parts. Conversely, I don't care for the twins. I find them grating and one-dimensional. Alice is grumpy and likes to hit things. Alphino likes to act pretentiously. With Alice, we may get some fighting in, but it'll be weighed down with incessant chatter, just like with her brother, and he's more likely to take the diplomatic approach to things. Now, together, these two are kind of fun. Sibling conflicts never lose momentum, just look at Devil May Cry. I won't lie though, Thangrid mentioning a chance to knock Alice down a peg or two, I was looking forward to that. Missed opportunity, Square. I'm ashamed of you. Do better. If I get stuck wandering around with either of the twins, personally, I will not have a great time. Perhaps some of you would. But I also know that one of the other Scions will get involved sooner or later. I know the twins won't be there to bug me forever. I know Astinian won't bide my time with long talks and emotionally driven beats. That's what our boy Grahatia is good for. Everybody in the group has their own unique skills and their own unique uses. There's a little something for everyone. The entirety of Dawntrail is remarkably one-track minded, from not just Wuk Lamat, but the plot itself. The Rite of Secession takes up the first half of the story, and it's all the same general lessons about respecting people's histories, cultures, and customs. So even the different challenges were god-awfully repetitive. Thus the problem festered. We're not getting anything new throughout this expansion, anything unique outside of the individual areas we visit, and most of those were temporary, transient. Narratively speaking, these areas were constructs meant to benefit Wuk Lamat's development. Once they accomplished that, none of these places mattered anymore. We don't need the Pelu for anything, nor the Hanu, nor the Mamul. The closest thing we get to a collaboration is when we work to reinforce a train for a mission, and then we blew it up. Yay, teamwork.
Excellent work, men! Let's hang up a banner!
To be a little fair to Dawntrail, this isn't the first Square title to shortchange us on the main cast. I had similar problems last year when FF16 dropped. I hadn't the best luck in picking games lately, but it was an overall fun experience. I'm a huge DMC fan, so seeing mechanics inspired by that series was a freaking delight. Also, turning into a giant fire gecko was endless fun. Why the hell doesn't Square let us do that more often? The issue I had was the same with Dawntrail. None of the characters in that game appealed to me. Clive was cool enough, it's a little generic, but he was the player character. The only playable character. And that's probably why none of the others stood out. They don't get to do anything. I found myself wondering more and more why anybody else was even around. To this day, I cannot recall most of their names because they're that irrelevant. And the ones I can remember are only mildly better. Like Jill. Even when it's finally her turn to get some payback and settle her own history, the woman runs interference while we do all the heavy lifting. The only two who I honestly enjoyed was Adolphus, who dies halfway through the game, and Torgal, the magic wolf dog. Yeah, the dog had more character than most humans in the game did. At least he was useful. Those heels saved my hide more than once. Because you're the bestest boy ever, ain't ya? Ain't ya? Yes you are. Yes you are. Now imagine what would happen if there was a game focusing on only one character, but there's nowhere near the level of excitement. No epic dominant fights, no partial nudity, just standing around and talking. Imagine how boring that would be. Oh wait, you don't have to. This is just the principle of character development. We haven't even touched on actual details. By some cataclysmic twist of nature, it only gets worse from here. Wuk's motivation, for example, is atrocious. She wants to be Dawn's servant and protect the peace her father established. Alright, so far, so good. Now, to accomplish that goal, she sailed across the ocean to Old Shylian, something that, as she is susceptible to motion sickness, would be a horrid ordeal, all to elicit allies in her bid for the throne. Because she cares so much, yes? So why didn't Wuk have anybody in Tural to help her? Why did she have to travel to foreign lands for this purpose? Think back to when the Rite first kicks off. Both her brothers have supporters in the crowd, cheering them on, advocating their victory. Only Sarulja and Kona have that fanfare. When Wuk exits, the crowd has largely dispersed, making it evident that she hasn't many, if any, achievements under her belt to earn the people's favor. Now, I did not care for how we agreed to help her, without any knowledge of whether or not Wuk is even liked in her own homeland. Bit of an oversight on our part. Her brother, though, Sarul, he is an accomplished warrior. He had just returned from slaying one of those okay, look, I still suck at the names, leave me alone. And Kona got an education from Old Shylian, their most prestigious institution in the known world. Both these men have done things, great things, to be worth the people's praise. Wuk Lamat has done nothing. In fact, it's stated she's been sheltered at the palace for most of her life, a privileged and safe environment. She has barely even traveled the Turali countryside despite her boasting an innate love for her people and her land. How can she claim such benevolence when she's never really explored her own homeland to such a degree as this? What makes Wuk Lamat believe she's suited for Dawn's servant when she's contributed nothing for the people's benefit? Done nothing of merit for herself. It's only once she has a chance for leadership that the woman's a go-getter, soliciting outsiders to help her win the throne, people with no vested interest in Tural's prosperity. Now sure, Kona did the same thing with Yorianje and Thangred aiding him. The difference is, Kona has still done things for Tural's benefit. His studying abroad gave him crucial insight into foreign technologies that could improve the country. The train system in Fistful of Dollars Land. Yeah, I still can't pronounce names in this area, so old Western references shall suffice. Was introduced by Kona, and the people use it to great effect. We even retrofit the train for a bombing run, integral to advancing the plot later on. Kona may elicit outsiders for aid, but he's still proven his value to the people. Wuk Lamat has not. This does not reflect well on her character in the slightest. Again, I can try and see what the writers were going for. A young princess looking to make a name for herself, earn her own place in history, but there's no build up to it, there's no development. So she just looks like a spoiled brat. Honestly, Wuk's whole personality is imbalanced as hell. Take this moment after the level 93 dungeon when we ascend the mountain.
Sarilcha, you bastard! I should end you here and now!
Quick to anger, isn't she? Hell, Santa Claus here had to talk her down.
Remember where you are. You will mind your conduct, or you will leave.
Nice job, Sasquatch. Sure, this gecko prick had it coming, but it's still a rash response from her. Fast forward, a ludicrously short time later, after Veligamanda has been unleashed by Bakul Jaja. Okay, I got a lot to say about this moment, about this character. Another time, though, we have other douchebags to call. We track the monster down and prepare to take it out before innocents are caught in the mayhem, only for these ugly dillholes to interfere.
That mountain is sacred ground. I forbid you to set foot on it.
Oh yes, most intimidating. And what does Wuk do? There are innocent lives on the line if we don't act quickly. Surely a competent leader knows when to play nice and when to kick ass. And she's played nicely fan-freaking-tastic. Here and now, at the worst possible time, you want to handle matters with kids' gloves. Time is of the essence, and innocent lives are at risk if you waste time playing the diplomat. This is the wrong time, wrong place to act enlightened. Where was this sensibility with your competitor? Wuk didn't hesitate to try and throw hands, yet these guys, they already tried picking a fight with us. We patched one guy up in good faith. We were already polite, it obviously didn't work. Very convenient, by the way, that this big-ass bird showed up to interrupt the hostilities. I mean, imagine if that never happened and these giants assaulted us as they intended. Surely Wuk would have just sat there and let it happen. Because we don't take up arms against our own people, right, Wuk? At least until you do. See the problem here? These two scenes happen virtually back to back. One where Wuk is happy to attack someone who rivals her bid for leadership, and another where she wants to play nice despite innocent lives being in jeopardy. The woman's morals are completely twisted. She only applied the peaceful approach when it was convenient for her, and abandoned it when it was not. Nothing happens between these two moments to indicate she suddenly learned a valuable lesson. But now, attacking her people is wrong. Her morals are as stable as a bipolar patient's, dependent solely on the writer's whim, not the story's progress. And once again, I see what the writers were going for. Having Wuk advocate for peace, with her stab first and ask questions later brother, does paint her as more benevolent. A virtuous leader in the making, refusing to harm those who try to harm her, just as her adoptive father would have done. Very inspiring, except it is devoid of any awareness of the situation at hand. There is a real danger looming. And by forcing this scene here, so soon after showing her willingness to jump to violence against an adversary, Wuk is shown as nothing more than self-serving. I know that wasn't the intention, but that is how it appears when there's no further context for your character's motives outside of trying to make them look good. The writers did not earn this moment. In fact, it has the opposite effect. It ruins her. Wuk Lamat is portrayed as so selfish, she's willing to put lives at risk just to preach her virtues. Sarilja had the right idea. Beat them down now and neutralize the threat before it can do any harm. These are two colossal examples of Wuk's entitlement being bared for all the world to see. Her righteousness is skin deep. Yet everybody, including the main cast, including ourselves, are only ever permitted to compliment and praise her. All this information had me asking the same question more and more as the questline progressed.
Hey, yeah? You ever wonder why we're here?
Nah, for real though. Why are we here? Why are we supporting this candidate? We knew nothing about her when we accepted Wuk's proposal. 100% of her resume comes from Aaronville, another person we knew little about. And half of what we do know is that he's a pure ray of sunshine. Imagine if any of the other NPCs we've had limited interaction with dropped a proposal of this magnitude. Our lives would be a minefield of what the hell is going on. We did zero research into Wuk and her policies. Hell, Thancred and Urianger did their homework before teaming up with Kona. Yet us, the twins, Kryle? Nuh-uh, no need. Just one little outing and a few serendipitous events, like Kryle coming across her grandfather's work, and we're interfering in the politics of a foreign body we have no knowledge of, supporting someone who may not have been on the level at all. It's not as though anybody has ever lied in the pursuit for political power before. That's fake news. Wuk's journey and her motivation for it is the whole premise of Dawntrail, and it's shaky at best. Worse yet, it puts our main cast in a predicament where they appear as imbeciles because they are supporting an imbecile. It's obvious the writers never thought to ask these very simple, very obvious questions themselves, leaving random a-holes like yours truly to nag about them on the internet. Maybe Square's compensation package isn't as luxurious as it used to be.
We don't get paid enough to do stuff.
We're never allowed to question Wuk in any capacity. The game goes out of its way to accommodate her at every waking turn. I cannot be the only one who kept banging his head against the table every time someone complimented her or validated Wuk's feelings. Anytime she appears down, something or someone jumps in instantly to reassure her. Here with the alpaca challenge, when Cerule captures a golden alpaca. Oh, goody, another 50 million gil mount on the way. I can't wait for the wife to nag me into buying one of those for her, just like all the others. But what happens? What does everybody say? Oh, those are so rare. You did just as good a job. And again with the Reach challenge, Kona finds a more scientific approach to aid with the Hanu's crops. And again, we instantly validate her less impressive accomplishments like a ditzy soccer mom, applauding her less than capable child with all the participation trophies a brat could desire. I know I sound like a total ass right now, and for the record, I'm not sorry. Get some. But the issue of Wuk's character being coddled constantly like this goes far beyond just a few comments here and there and a few pats on the back. You think the writing's been shit so far? No folks. All of this has been the intro. Time for the main course. I just mentioned the Trial of Reeds. That's a perfect place to start. So the huge storm at the start of the game ripped through the area, damaging their village, wrecking homes, and ruining the crops. Our goal is to find out why the reeds are dying and replenish them. Now, nobody in our group is a farmer. The closest the twins ever came to gardening is watching the servants tend to the property. Spoiled shits. Nobody has any idea where to start with this problem. So, what does our heir apparent suggest? Why, throw a party, of course. Everybody has a case of the grumps. Throwing a party will make them feel better. I mean, with their crops ruined, the local economy will tank, as reeds are utilized for many things in the area besides food. And without a stable food supply, the locals will have to relocate to escape the impending famine that will most likely kill many of their people. This happens in real life. It's horrifying. But sure, Wuk. Kickstarter rave. Such stellar leadership on display. Adding insult to injury, everybody in the group recognized what a stupid idea this was. Their expressions were strictly, "Bitch, are you serious?" across the board. And nobody speaks up. Nah. Can't argue with the Empress, oh hell nah. But the real noxious feeling on this shitcake of a script. She was right. Wuk suggested something at complete random, and it was exactly what was needed to complete the challenge.
What the hell was that?
What are the odds, really? Just consider it that the very first thing suggested at random that has no known connection to the actual problem was the solution. See, apparently this float is magic, because of course it is, and it's intended to help invigorate ether in the area, aiding in crop growth. But it too was damaged in the storm and needed mending. Mind you people, Wuk didn't make an educated guess. She didn't peer into her knowledge of Hanu culture to determine the float might be an important part of their agricultural practices. No. She wanted to throw a party. That's it. Because everybody was sad. And who likes to be sad? She is a child. This is a child's mentality. And they validated her childish delusions on freaking cue by proving her right. Look, there's plot contrivance, and then there's the plot giving your character a Hummer underneath the table. Guess which one this is? My head hit the desk at record speed when they bullshitted this solution into existence, which is why my character has a scar on his face. True story. This was lazy. This was stupid. This was contrived. It was some of the most mediocre writing I've ever seen, intended only to offer an easy win to our heroes because the writers either couldn't or just didn't bother trying to be more creative. Kona here, he was clever about this. He found a scientific solution to the crops failing, requiring study and analysis. You know, actual work. Lamat played Fairy Tale Magic Land and got rewarded all the same. To make it worse, yes it gets worse, not my fault, the one overseeing the festival here admitted they had no idea the float was designed to do this. In fact, I think it's directly stated that they had forgotten about the importance of the ritual over time. That's idiocracy. That's the plot from Idiocracy right here. See, in that movie, the world was ran by stupid people who forgot they needed water to grow food. They were so flabbergasted by the concept, their immediate thoughts went to toilet water. This whole Hanu challenge is the literal plot of Idiocracy and our Final Fantasy game. This should have been an important learning experience for Wuk, for her to realize that not everything can be solved with a mindless, carefree attitude, for her to work diligently to see how difficult it is to survive in the world beyond the capital. But they threw that opportunity in the dumpster and turned this drawn-out borehole of a plot into a shit-ass comedy show with no punchline. Well, there is one, I suppose. It's us. We already paid for the damn game. In truth, the entire Secession questline was one colossal jerkfest on Wuk's behalf. Think back to all those times when the story stopped in its tracks to validate this character. What does it always come back to? Peace. Wuk Lamat loves peace and happiness, which is what she acquired from the Dawn Servant. That and she cares about her people. She's very benevolent and profoundly empathetic. Or so we're told, there's plenty of data to the contrary. Now think, what do all the competitions seem to have in common? They all conform to a theme of understanding and learning about culture. For the Pelu, it was their merchant mentality. The Hanu, their festivals and tradition. The Yoktoi and their history. The Hrothgar, still can't pronounce their names. And their meals, also derived from their history. This isn't universally true, granted. For the Mamul, it was a contest of strength and teamwork, and challenges like the Alpaca could be accomplished without any care for the local culture, but to complete all of them does require that focus. The rite of secession may well have been tailor-made for Wuk Lamat's character. Caring about people is her whole thing. It's thrown in our faces repeatedly. And seeing that she's the only person the game invests more than 5 minutes into, it was obvious from the start which direction the story was going. And sure enough, every challenge was solvable by Wuk focusing on their history, their values. The culinary challenge, for example, depended on contestants studying the area's history to uncover a stash of ingredients vital to success. And recall, you need all 7 keystones to access the Golden City, the requirement for winning the competition. By the time the first 2 challenges were complete, I had already identified the pattern. There was never any doubt Wuk Lamat was going to win, when all the requirements conformed to her values. You've made it blatantly predictable how the contest was going to end before the first dungeon dropped. Your story is now not just only an unbearable drag. There's no substantial twist for your main character. There's no fear of failure, for the path is made to benefit you specifically. Zero wonder, zero excitement, zero investment in the plot. None of that includes the fact that the administrator for the competition here happens to be Wuk's biological father, something he is very well aware of. So there's a considerable bias in her favor from that factor alone. A conundrum that exists for no given reason and is never addressed for no given reason. The tallies in Wuk's corner are multiplying already. I swear to. This is the level of writing competence you'd expect from some junior high school creative writing class. Youngin still learning how to craft characters and plots. Not a project from one of the most recognizable gaming companies on the planet. They wrote themselves into a precarious corner with their singular focus on Wuk. Just consider, if they were to invalidate her at all, what else did the writers have to invest in? The Scions are barely extras in this. The new introductions only just register as long as they're on screen for. Even us, the Warrior of Light, plays third wheel for most of the game. Some say we're meant to be a mentor role. In truth, we're more like a cheerleader prompting Wuk's position. There's nobody. So of course Wuk is going to be right about everything. Her values will always be proven true. She is never invalidated nor called out on, no matter what path she chooses. Everything revolves around her, even when it's inappropriate. There's this one scene where one of the others, Y'shtola I think it was, calls Wuk so she can talk to us, rather than, just talk to us directly. This happens with other characters, like when we meet Erenville's mother in Living Memory. And it's Wuk who identifies her, not her own damn son. Wuk's belligerent inclusion in everything is less of a focus for the writers and more of an obsession. It wrecks any narrative value by conforming to this one person, ensuring that whatever they do, whatever they want, is precisely what the script will deliver. Sure, this method makes writing your script as easy as possible. It's just absolutely everything else that suffers for it. The cast, the world building, the stakes, and the investment in everything unfolding before our eyes. And believe it or not, this method is counterproductive for the very character you're going out of the way to simp for. Because not only is Wuk's path in Dawntrail predictable as hell, it's nonsensical beyond any form of rationale, leading to absolutely atrocious writing. Just look at this little get-together after we defeat Valikamanda. Wuk apparently reaches some profound standing in her quest.
I've come to believe that those smiling faces are the best measure of peace.
Smiles. You're gonna gauge the amount of peace in the world by how often people smile. And if people smile a bunch, that must mean they're happy. So Wuk Lamat wants to make sure everybody is smiling a bunch. This way she'll know they're happy and peaceful and everything is made up of happy fun times and rainbows. Our heroine is essentially a Care Bear, how delightful. Smiles and happiness, another childlike philosophy. This is what little kids think about the world, because they have yet to develop a more complex understanding. They lack experience and the critical thinking skills that tend to come with it. Somebody vying for leadership of a country spanning an entire continent should never be so juvenile to think like this. And no writer working on anything more complex than kindergarten-level entertainment should write a character this mind-numbing. All of us intrinsically know this has no basis in reality. Even fantasy worlds have their limits. Some might think I'm being pointlessly negative. It's a humble goal for a humble person. What's the big deal? Not everybody needs some multifaceted philosophy to guide them through life. Why the attitude? Well, fair point, contrary voice in my head. Some heroes preach freedom, others morality, this one preaches happiness. The problem is our assumption that noble-sounding goals equates to depth or progress. They do not. We all know this from personal experience. Remember your own childhoods, when mom or dad came home from work, exhausted after a long day. You would draw them a pretty picture, share a story from your day, something to cheer them up some. Then there's other situations that aren't so easily mended. Say you find Pops packing up his bags because it turns out that Mother Dearest has been practicing her yoga poses with the mailman and half the rest of the neighborhood. Somehow, I doubt a stick-figure drawing of your now broken family is going to help. What makes one person happy might make another person sad and miserable. Happiness is a terrible measure for running a country because different peoples have different values. And with a country as diverse as Tural, there is a great deal of nuance no empty-headed philosophy can hope to manage. We see this for ourselves with the Pelu. Some want peace and others want conflict as it will spur greater demand for their wares. Greater wealth, and thus happiness, is spurred from conflict that will make others sad. Sure, that's an immoral stand, most people in their right minds would never agree with that. But it is reality, and the story never tries to reconcile with it. In fact, her happiness speech is well after these events, and it never occurs to Lamat that this happiness philosophy is too broad and too vague to ever truly be implemented. Astounding character development. Her opposition to Sphene, however, is where the issue is most profound. Both desire nothing more than to assure their own people's prosperity. But in one accomplishing this goal, it permanently robs the other of theirs. Sphene needs to harvest souls to preserve her citizens, and Tural is a bountiful source. Thus, the differences are irreconcilable. They can't both be happy in the end. This dynamic should sound familiar. It's a theme FF14 has tackled in the past, in a much better game. A game that inspired me, and I miss that feeling so very, very much. Shadowbringers presented us with a true conflict, not just of beliefs and values, but of survival. Emet-Silk's desire to revive his civilization couldn't be reasoned with. Our desire to live despite our shortcomings, our flaws, wouldn't bend to his perspective. Even when Emmet makes some very valid points about the flaws in our own natures.
Let us imagine that the laws of reality are again undone and the world faces true annihilation. Do you honestly believe that half your number would sacrifice themselves to save the other? Of course they wouldn't! And if you had witnessed history unfold as I have, you would reach the same conclusion.
Something even the Scions, for all their wisdom and experience, couldn't hope to argue against. The story treated our conflict with the Ascians like a war. Different sides with their own wants, their own aspirations. Irreconcilable, but understandable. A true conflict. Shadowbringers never held back the punches. By comparison, Dawntrail hardly has a conflict left to resolve by the climax of the game. Sphene had already abandoned any hope of attacking Tural. Instead, she planned to connect to another reflection, another world to harvest souls for her needs. Wuk's home, our world, is safe from harm, unlike in Shadowbringers where if we failed, it was game over, for us, for the first. Now, I won't be so bold as to say that the threat is not existent. Sphene could always return once she's back to full strength. But you must admit, the danger has been significantly reduced, to the level of making our time in living memory nothing more than another series of fetch quests and filler, rather than a staging point for the final battle. Shit, son. We're basically just mucking around waiting while Sphene runs the equivalent of a software update. There's even a damn public service announcement for it.
Meso Terminal, memory deletion in progress. Upon completion, interdimensional fusion will commence.
Our stakes have less weight than a female aura. I mean, look at them. They're so little. And so is the plot significance. Without major stakes, and without any relevant threat to our well-being, what conflict is left to be found here at the game's climax? What is there left to resolve? What is there left to work with? The only damn person the story focused on for more than 5 minutes. Wuk is the only person of substance. Even Sphene feels like a carbon copy of her. I'll avoid saying much about her as possible. The next video will tackle Sphene and the other antagonists in greater detail. So again, all we have is Wuk Lamat and her values, her beliefs to cling to for substance as we head into the final battle. But as we've seen, as we've discussed, Wuk is never wrong about anything. She's validated, even when she makes crap up. So how are we supposed to resolve anything when your only important character is also infallible?
Is it because I'm the best?
The writers sunk all their efforts into her. They can't openly invalidate her. It would render all their work useless. There can be no conflict under these circumstances, physical or ideological, which is quadruply ironic because Wuk is contradicted constantly in the game. by the nuances of the plot to go unaddressed, like Sphyn's desire to protect her citizens, by Wuk's own people and their conflicting desires, like it was with the Pelu, by herself, her own selfish actions, as we saw with Valigamanda. Her indifference to aiding her people until the throne was up for grabs, and it's contradicted by our time in living memory, where we kill everyone. I cannot believe how nonchalant we were about that. My god, this section was handled abhorrently. Our benevolent heroes casually erased an entire society from existence and never stopped to address the horrid moral implications of it all. Yet another testament to the game's tone-deaf writing. Now, I like me some moral nuance. It's an interesting thought experiment, gauging when and where one can be loose with their values. However, mass murder is well beyond where I draw the line. Yes, I know these people are maintained through the consumption of souls. It's a horrible system, and I don't disagree with the need to shut down this borderline cannibalism. Our characters' refusal to address the conundrum of killing off others, people whom we see are decent and loving, and intend no ill will towards anyone. That is a problem. It's not a good look for any of us, an unfortunate issue that keeps occurring in this game. More importantly, it completely derails the very values the game has been boasting about the entire time. You desire peace and happiness, Wuk? What happiness are you endeavoring for? These people are already happy. They can meet loved ones again, play together, enjoy each other's company, and we murder them all with zero hesitation. The only people that had us even hesitate were those we had personal connections to. Everybody else got the proverbial shaft. There's no peace here, no matter how we may try and defend our actions. There's no escaping that. There's no happiness. We've robbed these people of everything, leaving a barren landscape behind. Nobody is smiling. There's nobody left. Everything you preach to us gets abandoned and ignored because the twat-hard writers couldn't reconcile their Golden Girls values with the plot. Values that, once again, is all the game has left to capitalize on as we near the climax. The height of the story where the stakes should be at or near their absolute peak, leaving us with no threat to eliminate, and consequently the bare minimum motivation to finish the damn game. And best of all, a tone-deaf character arc devoid of substance. The only character arc in the whole game that fell apart under the slightest pressure. God save me, this game is terrible. Hey Wuk, you want to see happiness? Let me introduce you to our buddy Xenos. He was always smiling ecstatically every time we saw him, usually as we took turns trying to disembowel each other. But it's happiness. Can't argue with that or else the whole script will look retarded, more than it already does. Hey, don't scoff at me. I know some of you are. I get it. I do. There's nothing inherently wrong with this sentiment, outside of it being the primary driving force or the future leader of an entire country.
Everything falls into two categories. Either you don't understand it, or you just don't care. Yeah, I don't really know what you mean by that, but I guess it doesn't matter.
That, though, isn't everything. Yeah, there's still more. Just, look, give me a minute. I'm gonna go hang out at the strip club in Yulmore. I need some TNA to gawk at before we continue. Yeah, that's more like it. Okay, where were we?
Foreign scum! Who are you to mock me?
Oh right, this bullshit. So you know how the game kept pushing that Wuk wasn't the strongest or most capable fighter? They made clear that her strength lied in other avenues beyond martial prowess or strict intellect. Like everything else about her, it's beaten over our heads. And also, like everything else about her, it's dismissed at the first inconvenience. Now, Wuk had a brief bout with Bakul Jaja much earlier during the Hanu quest. She threw all her strength into that strike and they brushed it off like it was nothing. It's made very apparent that Bakul is on another level. Something that should be on our minds during their rematch. An intelligent writer would craft a confrontation where Wuk Ma would have to find creative solutions to get the best of them. Subterfuge, or teamwork perhaps. Something the character also rants about aplenty, and then bails on. More on that shortly. Instead, the writers decided she's suddenly strong enough, and Wuk Ma beats Bakul's scaly hide. She even whips multiple mobs of baddies he tries to throw at her. So, I got some questions. How did she beat him? There was no training arc, unless somebody achieved Super Saiyan in one of the many cutscenes I skipped. Possible, albeit unlikely. Oh, her resolve grows, and Wuk gets stronger through that. She wins through the power to believe in herself. That's what this is. She won, and the writers turned the game's first primary antagonist into a joke through the power to believe in herself. The cringe is unimaginable. What was even the point of any of her development? No, really. The writers repeatedly told us that Wuk's strength lied in other avenues. They did this constantly, endlessly, validating that she's just as important as the others despite her limitations. Then when it came time for a real fight, she suddenly rolls consecutive D20s and massacres her opponent like he's nothing. They wasted our time portraying her weaknesses just to abandon them when the going got rough. They wasted valuable investment, wasted valuable character building, all in exchange for an easy victory because these twats couldn't handle their beloved protagonist potentially taking a loss. This whole event was lazy and self-indulgent. Full stop. I could lose my collective shit over the failed development of a character who is the sole focus of the game. It takes a true amateur to have so much time available for one person and still muck it up so astoundingly. Instead, let's look at this faux pas from another perspective. You see, I've been slowly building towards a central theme with my videos, of how shit-ass writing doesn't just ruin the story's focus, it bulldozes everything around it. Dawntrail dealt the many tragedies throughout the series a hefty blow by having their heroine win through self-confidence. Just think, reflect on all these people who have suffered and failed over the years. Trials and tribulations that pushed many characters to the brink, testing their mettle, their courage. And it turns out all they ever had to do was believe in themselves, and everything would have been fine. I mean, it must. It worked for Wuk Lamat. You're gonna tell me she's special after so much time telling me she's not special? Don't you dare. Remember these poor suckers and Shadowbringers? Whew, that was rough. If only they cared more like Wuk Lamat did. They would have survived that, because that's how it works now. Tesleen, also from Shadowbringers. If she cared more, that wouldn't have happened. That's how it works now. Yazel, in Heavensward, sacrificing herself to make amends for her own mistakes. Nah, she just needed to believe in herself. Them airship cannons wouldn't have touched her, because that's how this works now. Ardbert and his team failing to save their world, being tricked into causing the flood of light. They should have just cared more like Wuk does. Failures, all of you. Ourselves, getting the beatdown in Stormblood. Come on guys, we just didn't care enough to win. If only we cared like the great Wuk Lamat did, we would have beaten Xenos on the first go, but that's how it works now. This. Yeah, he should have just cared more. Our best bud, who gave his life for us, died in our arms in a pool of his own blood, and still never stopped smiling because he was a fucking boss amongst bosses. He should have just believed in himself, like Wuk Lamat did, and he'd still be here with us. Because that's just how it works now. Thank you, Square Enix, for diligently treating your legacy like the most reviled red-headed stepchild. It is quite the inspiration. That is still not the worst of it. Here's the worst of it.
Papa?
Okay, several things. First off, we're all on the same page that we killed this guy, right? Gulool Jaja is dead because we all stood here like limp-dick jackasses as an enemy he cut down, got back up, went psycho limit break, and skewered him. So my first videos on the channel were about how defeating Zodiark was a ludicrous outcome that created several conundrums the writers would struggle with later on. I will include links below for the whole argument, but basically the issues boil down to the developers being left to either handicap us moving forward, or make all future big bads canonically as powerful, or more powerful than Zodiark to maintain the danger levels. Yes, Endwalker has its explanations, but those don't really stand. The point here is there was a third option, one I never considered because I possessed more than 5 functioning brain cells to ever stoop that low. And that was, we would just stand around and let terrible things happen right in front of us. Just like we did right here. Behold, one and all, our benevolent, unstoppable hero keeping to the sidelines as an extremely avoidable death occurs before his very eyes, and then has the nerve to act surprised that something bad happened. Be inspired. Now I know what every defender of the scene is gonna say. Gulool insisted on finding Sorul himself. His own son had attacked his people, and it was the father's responsibility to handle it. For pride and honor, that old crap. I can't appreciate that notion. However, I don't think that sentiment applies after physically watching your opponent use swift cast and res on himself. If you kill someone, and they get back up and start talking smack at you, honor is out the window. Stop standing around and get involved, you inept shit weasels. What does it say about us that we've resorted to standing around while horrible things occur right in front of us? How can we pretend to be the hero any longer when this is the most proactive that we're allowed to be? You can argue us not being the main character in this story. Our horrendous lack of agency is now being used as an excuse to let people die, all in the name of the script. Mother of God, this was stupid. Many commenters in the last video mentioned this, and they are right to be annoyed. Never has a more avoidable death occurred before us. Never have we stood around and let something happen just to advance the plot.
Papa?
And you, sister, you are just the worst of the worst. Everything about this scene contradicts Wuk's entire character dynamic. All her values, her beliefs, her virtues. Let me show you. Wuk Lamat believes anything is possible by working together. Like everything else about her, she says so, constantly. Where the hell was that benevolent teamwork when your father was getting ran through? You didn't hesitate to utilize the power of friendship at the Mamul trial when you fight the specter of your father during his prime. You embraced teamwork when killing your daddy, but saving the real deal is a stretch too far. Had Wuk employed her teamwork philosophy, Sarul's assault could have been thwarted. You know our track record, it's not unreasonable to assume we could have taken him. And yet, nah. Teamwork is too convenient in this situation. Let's have Gulool handle him. There's no way he could... Ah shit, that's right. What is another of Wuk's so-called virtues? Happiness. Something else she preaches to an obnoxious degree. Tell me, Queen Furry, how does letting the former Dawn servant die create the happiness you aspire to? The Turali people adored their leader. He created a near century of peace for them, brought people together after generations of conflict, and he seems to be a stand-up guy, great charisma. I enjoyed what few scenes we got with this guy. Standing on the sidelines and letting him die creates no happiness. Just the opposite. And letting him die creates no happiness. Just the opposite. Why is it the first instant this prime philosophy of yours might be good for something, you conveniently forget it exists and stand there like an expired jug of milk stinking up the place? And lastly, peace. You want peace, so you let the leader of the enemy army walk away so he could do more harm. You crushed any notion of keeping your people safe. I'm sorry, were we supposed to take this bitch seriously? You may debate that taking out Sarul doesn't stop the warships overhead, though as we see later after we defeated him, that would have absolutely ended the threat because control of the army went to his son upon his death. The most one can argue is we weren't aware of this factor and the risk was too great. Considering all the BS we contend with later, I argue doing nothing was the worst case scenario, and given our experience, letting the enemy walk away all casual-like rarely improves the matter. What a revelation, I know. We were absolutely strong enough to beat Sarul. Stopping him here and now wasn't just a possibility, it was a guarantee, and it would have ended his threat then and there. Which is exactly why the writers had us stand around like NPC rejects, because it was too much work to try for anything remotely better. For the life of me, I cannot comprehend how anybody working on this story dropped the ball as often and with such unrelenting frequency. Everything revolves around you. You get more screen time than everybody else in this game put together, and then some. Why does your writing suck so much ass? I am trying to limit my swearing in these videos, and these a-holes are making it impossible. Everything Wuk Lamat bases the core of her character around was rendered obsolete, and not just one scene, but one single moment within that scene. Even our mediocre conflict with Fiend was not so efficient as this, hence why I've deemed this moment the worst of the worst. Endlessly. They reminded us of the few, very specific values Wuk Lamat clings to, like the very structure of their work depended on it. Then every time they had the chance to put these values to the test, the writers bailed. They did it during Varligamando's escape, as I explained. It happens multiple times as everybody's wants and desires conflict with one another, and this moron's approach is to preach peace and happiness as though that would accomplish anything. It doesn't. They ruined any semblance of worth in Wuk Lamat's character when they had her stand around and let her father die. And still they continue to push this person as the best thing to ever happen, the FF14, interjecting her into every facet of the game, even where she has no business being. Yeah, I may as well bring that up too. Wuk Lamat steals the final fight from us. We're giving Fiend a beatdown when Wuk suddenly breaks through the barrier and holds her off for us. Why aren't Graha or Cryo here? Oh yeah, that would require the writers gave a shit about anyone else. They clearly don't. So the barrier meant to keep people out suddenly weakens enough for only one person to get through, the only person the game cares about. What an insanely selective handicap that is. And she deals haymakers against the boss, helping us finish her off. We are her little helper the entire game, and even our ultimate fight ends up belonging to her. We are so cucked in this game. Even the final battle is taken from us, all because the writer's golden girl apparently wasn't given enough attention. Even the final moment of so-called reconciliation with the enemy belongs to her, which has issues on its own.
I will protect my people's happiness!
Leave that burden with us now. We were buried
Wuk, we just killed everybody in living memory. Why would Sphene listen to us now? This moment makes no sense at all. This twat has everything handed to her. She's like Rey Palpatine from the Disney films. It's beyond moronic. Wuk Lamat earns nothing she receives. Every life lesson given amounts to the most elementary concept most of us have figured out before adolescence kicks in. Yet this impending leader treats them like profound revelations. The quest system adheres strictly to Wuk's personality, robbing any sense of wonder at how events will play out. She is magically as strong as the story wants her to be, even after stressing at length that her strengths lie in other avenues, wasting your time and mine. She preaches a love for her people, yet she's never done anything for them prior to having a shot for the throne, showcasing her to be conceited and self-serving. And worst of all, she is everywhere in this game. We get no distance, no peace. As I stated, she is Dawntrail's main scenario, and if Wuk doesn't appeal to you, the main story will not appeal to you. It's an all-or-nothing dilemma. She steals every scene, every opportunity for development, every victory. This was crap. This character was crap. The plot and the world itself bend to her convenience and goes out of the way to prove she is the best person ever and makes every facet of the story about her, no matter how grating she gets, whether the story benefits from it or not. Wuk Lamat is easily one of the worst written characters I've ever seen. There is zero awareness in her development. Her behavior flops randomly. There's no care taken with her shortcomings. She never loses. She's proven right at every turn. Solutions to complex problems fall into her lap with minimum effort. Whoever advocated to make this the whole focus of the expansion?
Because if there's one thing my journey has taught me, it's that your happiness is my happiness!
They deserve to be fired. 16 pages. This script is 16 freaking pages. This is my longest rant by far. Because the whole game is about Wuk, I could hardly keep it shorter without skimming on important details. And despite all this, I can hardly find anything appealing enough to explain why she is the sole focus. The only thing I can do is refuse to give her further attention. We're done here. We got one more video to go. Next time, it's the antagonists who get the treatment. The good parts and the many bad parts. I know there's a lot of contention with this character, and I expect many people will have nothing nice to say to me in response. That isn't my intention, but I know it's inevitable, so come whatever may, I guess. In the meantime, I'm tired, I'm pissed off, I need a nap. As usual, like and subscribe, share your thoughts down below. I'm sure the comments section will be extra delightful, and I'll see you all in the next one.